Hey all, here OS Reviews. You're watching our unboxing and first impressions look at the Xiaomi Mi A2 Lite. This is a smartphone that runs on Android One, which is a stock version of Android that's guaranteed to receive updates up to 3 years in the future. You can think of it as a much cheaper Pixel phone for a budget-conscious consumer. Now, Xiaomi phones have historically always been great value devices, but the A2 Lite is one of the least expensive phones you can pick up. It's selling right now for $170 without a contract. It features a 5.84-inch LCD display that has a full HD resolution. It also has a notch on the top, which is a slightly controversial design, but it does increase the screen-to-body ratio, making it look more premium than the price would suggest. There's a dual camera as well, comes in 3 colors. Now the processing power here is not quite as powerful as the regular Mi A2, which actually doesn't have a notch, and that one has a Snapdragon 660, but this one uses a slightly aging Snapdragon 625, which Xiaomi have been using on many of their phones, especially the Redmi series, for the past 2-3 years now. With that being said, it's still a reasonably capable chipset. It's an octa-core one that's clocked at 2 GHz. It is exciting that we're seeing more and more Android One edition phones from manufacturers like Motorola as well as Nokia, to name a few, and that means we will see less and less bloatware. It has a 4,000 mAh capacity battery, and there's also a version of the phone called the Redmi 6 Pro, which uses the exact same design from the hardware, but actually has MIUI on top. But again, if you don't want to see Xiaomi's custom skin on top of Android, you can pick up the A2 Lite instead for a unsolicited version of Android that's designed the way Google has intended the OS to look like. The box is very clean. We have just the phone right on top. The build as well as the design language is very familiar to anyone who's used or seen a Redmi phone in the past. Here is the Redmi 5 Plus, also known as the Note 5, and you can tell that it looks very similar. So there's a aluminum back, but the top and the bottom, which is used for the antennas, are made out of plastic. And other contents include a free TPU case, which Xiaomi tends to bundle with most of their phones. There's a quick user guide as well that documents some of the quick features. It is a dual SIM phone, so you can pop in 2 numbers at once. Also supports a micro SD card to expand the built-in memory. Now, since this is a budget phone, it does use a micro USB port as opposed to USB Type-C, unlike the regular Mi A2, which has Type-C. There's also a USB-based charger, as well as a SIM ejector tool. So let's peel back this screen protector here. It just says 12 plus 5 megapixel AI dual camera that has that bokeh effect that is very trendy right now, 4,000 mAh battery, and a 19:9 aspect ratio display just because of that extra notch on the very top there. Let's power it up and see if there's any juice. And it immediately just launches into Android One. A quick look at the hardware. There's still a small chin on the bottom, but it is a little smaller than devices that we've seen in the past from Xiaomi, such as the Redmi 5 and the 5 Plus, as well as the Note 5. So you can tell that the bezels here have been shrunken down a little bit. On the side, we do have a volume rocker and a power key in the exact same placement as other Redmi devices. And on the bottom, we do have a speaker, there is a microphone, and the micro USB for charging. There's a SIM card tray on the left-hand side, and on the very top, there's also the 3.5mm headphone jack and an IR blaster for controlling TVs, air conditioners, and other devices using the phone as a remote. So in first impressions, the notch on the very top is definitely not as large as some other phones, but it's also not invisible. It houses the front-facing camera and a proximity light sensor along with the earpiece. You can tell how the status notification bar for the time and for things like GPS and battery status are also occupying the space. Although I believe you can turn this color black if you want to kind of hide it from view. Definitely not the most elegant approach, but then again, considering it's only $170, it's very forgivable. In terms of dimensions, it's definitely more compact than many of the 6-inch devices, and again, the regular Mi A2 has a 6.1-inch screen, so this is definitely easier to grip with one hand. At the same time, it's not quite as small as a 5-inch phone from a few years back, so it sits somewhere in between those. We're setting up the fingerprint scanner right now, and the placement here seems to be quite ergonomic and easy to reach using just one hand. I'm also going to point out that the display on first impression seems to be reasonably bright. Now, it's not an AMOLED panel, but it still has very good contrast as well as viewing angles. Something I am noticing though is that the fingerprint scanner isn't quite as recessed compared to past Redmi devices that I've tried. So this is actually slightly easier to feel out. This is slightly more flush. So now we are just greeted to the Android UI, which is simply running on Android 8.1 Oreo at the moment, but it will receive the Android Pie 9.0 update very quickly, just because, again, the software side of things is controlled entirely by Google. So we have access to all the Google standard apps like YouTube, we have Maps, we have the Play Store. We can simply swipe up to have access to all our apps. So this gesture here can also be found on the Pixel phones. So this is very easy to use. We also have some Mi-specific apps as well from Xiaomi, including Mi Drop and a file manager, but for the most part, we don't see too much bloatware installed. Again, this is a closer look at the notch on the very top there. We have access to notifications as well as things like turning Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth on and off. And again, when moving back media and most content, you can see that the top bar here just turns black. So it kind of disappears and fades away into the background, so we have a symmetrical top and bottom. Again, the panel is reasonably impressive for a budget device, plenty sharp and pretty accurate colors in general. Quickly going through some of these wallpapers. Some of these are actually by Xiaomi, but they've been pre-installed here as wallpapers that you can select. But they are, again, pretty attractive and showing off the vibrancy of the panel here. If we turn it off again and turn it back on, this is what the main page looks like. Fingerprint scanner, very quick to unlock. And obviously we still can't expect flagship level performance from this because at the end of the day it's definitely a mid-end to low-end device. But compared to other devices in the price category, performance will hopefully be better because of this very clean install of Android. Out of the box we have about 21 gigs free. If you have the 32 gig model, you can always supplement that by inserting your own micro SD card. And indeed it's running on Android Oreo edition, as we can see here. I do expect this to be quite energy efficient, and perhaps it may last you even 2 to 3 days on a single charge. Of course, we'll be doing much more testing to find out if that's true or not, but again, a lot of potential at this very low price. So you can check out more details about this in the links down below, but be sure to stay tuned for our full review coming out soon. This has been the Xiaomi Mi A2 Lite, an Android One edition phone that sells for only $170.